In this video, we are looking at the most fundamental concept for reducing complexity when working with data in Excel. Now, this isn't some clickbait hype. Most Excel users have no idea about this, but it's the key to understanding how to work efficiently with Excel. So if you're ready, let's get started. The concept we are looking at is first normal form. In database terminology, normalization is the process of improving the efficiency of holding data. It reduces duplication and improves integrity, which makes the data easier to work with. Now, there are different levels of normalization, where efficiency benefits improve with each subsequent level. The most basic level is known as first normal form. I'm sure you've heard it said many times that Excel is not a database. As a result, we can't apply the full normalization process to the data that we hold in Excel's grid. However, we can apply the basic principles of first normal form to Excel. Doing so reduces the complexity of holding and calculating on data in our spreadsheet. So let's discover how we can use and apply first normal form in Excel. So what is first normal form and why is it so important? Well, for data to be in a first normal form layout, it must be structured in a specific way and meet various rules. And the rules are as follows. Firstly, all elements must be single valued, which means values in each column must contain a single value and not a combination of values. As we can see here, breaking units and size into separate columns makes the data easier to work with. Secondly, columns must hold the same type and kind of values. Here we have a column for description and a column for number. Now, while the number column contains all numbers, they aren't the same thing. We can't sum all of those numbers and get a meaningful value. And that's because that column contains a mix of units and values. Therefore, first normal form would require us to use different columns, one for units, one for values, and then we could aggregate the numbers in those columns in a meaningful way. The third rule is that every column must have a unique name. When working with data, columns are referred to by their name and not by their position. Therefore, we need column names that are unique. We can see here that H1 and H2 are not unique column names. They are repeated. Therefore, we would need to create unique names for those columns so we could easily refer to the correct values and calculate the correct results. The fourth rule is that the order of data must not matter. In first normal form, the order of rows and columns should be irrelevant. So, if we drag those rows or columns to other positions, it shouldn't impact our ability to use that data, which means any ordered or grouped layouts are not in first normal form, and we definitely shouldn't have merged cells. Here we can see the column order probably does matter, because if the columns were in a different order, it wouldn't make sense. But if we use first normal form, we could mix up the columns and it wouldn't affect our ability to use that data. The rules for first normal form change how we record and use data. By applying these rules, it leads to a vertical orientation, where each row is a separate record or event, and each attribute of that record is contained in a separate column, and there are no missing values. This format is critical for working efficiently in Excel. For example, have you ever had a pivot table which keeps showing an error message or doesn't calculate correctly? It's because the data is not in first normal form. If it were, the pivot table would work correctly. Or how about formulas? While Excel can perform matrix calculations across horizontal and vertical orientations at the same time, it can become complex. But first normal form makes it easy. Let me show you. Here we have a layout holding data for Q1 to Q4, and the data is contained in 3 orientations. We have the vertical orientation, which contains the item. Then we have the horizontal orientation, which contains the quarters, and we also have a grouped horizontal orientation, which contains the years. This is a common format for receiving input from other Excel users. Let's suggest that we want to calculate the average value for all the items in the year, stated in M3, and the quarter, stated in M4. To calculate that, our formula would need to be something like this. Now don't worry, you don't need to understand this formula, but just look at how many functions it uses. We have an average, a filter, a scan, and a lambda. Some of these are very advanced functions. Even though we had an input which appeared to be a simple layout, we needed complex formulas to deal with it. Now let's go and take a look at the same data, but that data is held in first normal form. You can see that we have a row for each record and a column for each attribute about that record. And if we were to move any of our rows or columns, it wouldn't prevent our ability to calculate on these values. And we want to calculate the same value as our previous example. So we have the year of 2025 and the quarter of Q3. Now to calculate this using the data in first normal form, we only needed a single function, and that function is average ifs. So by comparison, if we hold our data in first normal form, we can see that our formulas can be significantly less complex. My guess is that nobody has ever explained this to you. So as a result, you've probably been creating spreadsheets that are time consuming because they're difficult to work with and require a lot of manual intervention. This is why we have lessons in our Excel Academy that show you not just how to use Excel as a tool, but the right way to use Excel. Therefore, our members are able to create self-updating workbooks that require no manual intervention, meaning they can spend less time on meaningless work and more time on what's important to them. Just head on over to exceloffthegrid.com to find out more about our Excel Academy. Unfortunately, inputs come in all shapes and sizes, and that's often determined by the software we use or the original spreadsheet creator who has sent us the file. Therefore, we simply don't have the luxury of receiving everything in first normal form. But this is where Power Query steps in. It's the tool baked into Excel to reshape inputs into the ideal format for calculation. So we can go from any input to an optimal layout simply by clicking Refresh All in Power Query. And you've probably guessed it that our Excel Academy has courses and tools for working with Power Query too. In this video, we've seen that for Excel users, the layout of data is key to creating efficient workbooks where we don't spend all of our time fighting with complex formulas. And the key to achieving this is Power Query, because it can take any of our inputs and it can reshape them into first normal form, which is the optimal shape that we need for calculation in Excel. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.